Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Nathan and today we are doing our 6th class overview. My name is Nathan and today we are doing our 6th class overview for Dungeons & Dragons. Today we are covering the fighter class for D&D 5e. So fighter is a pretty interesting class. It kind of encompasses everything from your knight in heavy armor to you can be a guy with a polearm or a big two-handed weapon or even an archer. But regardless of what you kind of pick to do, fighters kind of cover all the archetypes of a character that is a master of arms. So here is our agenda for this video. I'm going to kind of talk about the class overview and role of the core fighter class. Then I'll talk about all of the fighter's class features from level 1 to level 20. Importantly, I'm not going to dive too deep into any of the subclass features here. I'll just kind of give a general gist of what they do at each level. This is the same as all of my class overviews. And then I'll talk a little bit about multiclassing the fighter with other classes before summarizing and kind of rating the core fighter class on how it does on different aspects of play. So let's get going with our overview and role of the fighter. So the fighter is a martial character who can be either dexterity or strength based. Now, if I was going to kind of define their core role, the fighter is a durable damage dealer. Now, importantly, they're capable of excelling at ranged and or melee combat, depending on how you want to set them up. And all of their resources of the class are based on a short rest. So this is the kind of character where if you're playing a campaign where you're able to short rest or even long rest after each combat, you're going to be able to do all of your stuff pretty much each combat, and you don't really have to worry about holding back. So overall, can be very fun and is something where you want to use what you have and take care of the enemies and survive long enough to fight. So class features at level 1. Fighters have a D10 hit dice. This is the second largest hit dice in the game, just behind barbarians with D12s. The only other classes that also have D10 hit dice are paladins and rangers. So this is primarily reserved for the more martial characters, and this is one of the things that makes the fighter class rather durable, is that they have a pretty good amount of hit points. In terms of their armor, they get access to all armor, so light, medium, heavy, and shields. In terms of weapons, they're proficient with simple and martial, which is kind of as you would expect for a character that's be a master of arms. They're capable of using any weapon except for something that's exotic right out of the gate. In terms of tools, they don't have any natural tool proficiencies. You'll only have the ones that you get from your background and or race. In terms of their saving throws, they are proficient in strength and constitution saves. They are generally very resilient against physical effects, although they tend to have a weakness in terms of things that target mental saves like intelligence and wisdom. In terms of their skills, they get to pick 2 skills from the following list: acrobatics, animal handling, athletics, history, insight, intimidation, perception, survival. Now, one of the things as a fighter is your main stat is probably going to be strength or dexterity based on whether you want to do melee or ranged, and then you'll probably have a secondary stat of constitution. This leaves a fair amount of points if you're doing the point by method to determine your stats to kind of go into a mental score. So you should be able to pick kind of a niche that your fighter is going to be good at, but they're not going to be a fantastic skill character, kind of whatever you pick. Fighters can also be grapplers, so if you want to go that route, I suggest taking proficiency in athletics. That is the skill for that. Now, their other class features at level 1, they get second wind and a fighting style. So second wind, as a bonus action once per short rest, this short rest resource, they can roll a d10 and add their fighter level and recover that many hit points. And this is just a nice durability boost. You don't even have to use this in combat. If you're missing some hit points and haven't used this and are about to take a short rest, absolutely fire it off and take advantage of this. This just is a natural class feature that makes the fighter pretty durable. Now, the fighting style is something that you get to pick, and you can swap it out as you level up, but this is something that enables you to customize your fighter and kind of tailor them toward how you want them to fight. They usually go with different weapons. Here's all the fighting styles that are available from fighters to pick from. So, in the player's handbook, we have archery, which helps with attacks with bows or crossbows. We have defense, which boosts your armor class. We have dueling, which boosts your damage when you're holding a weapon in one hand. This works with a shield and is a kind of a good way to compensate for not having a two-hander while still having a shield, so you can boost your damage and still have that defensive aspect. They've got great weapon fighting. This lets you re-roll ones and twos on your damage dice when you're attacking with a two-handed weapon. Um, a small boost for two-handers and can be pretty fun. You have the protection fighting style, which enables you to impose disadvantage on enemies that are attacking your allies and requires a shield, so good for that more defensive oriented type character. And then you have two weapon fighting, which enables you to do a bit more damage when you are dual wielding weapons. From Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, that you have the options of blind fighting. This gives you blind sense out to a range of 10 feet, so you can fight in the dark or with your eyes closed and that kind of thing. Got Interception, which lets you reduce incoming damage against adjacent allies. Again, another kind of defensive option for that character that's going to defend their allies. Have the Superior Technique, and what this does is it gives you a maneuver off of the Battlemaster maneuver list. This is a subclass, and this is kind of a good way to inject a little bit of that weapon maneuver into a character that's not going to take that subclass. They also have thrown weapon fighting that boosts your ability to throw like javelins or hand axes or daggers if that's what you want to do, and unarmed fighting if you want your character to kind of be a pugilist and punch people. Now, at level 2, fighters get Action Surge. And this is one of fighters' best features. What this does is once per short or long rest, you can take an extra action on your turn and get all the benefits thereof. And as we get to higher levels and we improve our attack action with some of our class features, this will also apply to that. Importantly, this feature also works with spells if you get them from another class, and we'll talk more about that later. But overall, this is a very powerful resource and one of the things that enables fighters to do a lot of burst damage and kill things that need to die very quickly. At level 3, fighters get their martial archetype or their subclass. Most of these have all of them have some kind of subclass defining feature that you'll get at this level, and potentially a ribbon feature that is usually more for flavor or utility and that kind of thing. So here are all of the subclasses available to pick from. From the player's handbook, we have the Battlemaster, which kind of focuses on doing maneuvers and special attacks with your weapons. We have the Champion, which is pretty generic. They get an expanded crit range and extra fighting styles, mostly passive stuff. Then you have the Eldritch Knight. This is a pretty interesting one that makes your fighter into a spell sword and gives them a limited spell casting ability. From Xanathar's, we got the Arcane Archer, which is kind of a magical archer. No spell casting, but they get some things they can do with arrows. We have the Cavalier, which is focused on defending their allies and riding a mount. And then you have the Samurai, which is kind of taken from the classical Japanese culture, where you have this honorable warrior who can dispatch their enemies with a flurry of attacks. And then from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, we got the Psy Warrior, which is a fighter who fights with their weapons and their mind. And then you've got the Rune Knight, who carves runes into their gear to imbue themselves with power. Now, there's a few more fringe ones. From the Sword Coast Adventurers guide, we have the Banneret, which is kind of like this knight in shining armor that leads and rallies their allies. And then the Echo Knight, which focuses on making copies of yourself. It's important to note that the Echo Knight is from the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, and it's critical role content and may not be allowed at all tables. At level 4, fighters get their first ability score increase or feat, and unique among all classes, fighters will get a total of 7 ability score increases or feats as they level up. And importantly, because you're a martial character, a lot of your power comes from having high stats in your attack abilities, but also weapon feats. There are kind of 3 main schools of, optimized fighter builds. You have the two-hand versions, which typically are going to use pole arms with the polearm master and the great weapon master feats. If you want to go a weapon and a shield, the typical route is to go a shield and either a spear or a staff and use the polearm master feat to get a bonus action attack. And if you want to go ranged, the typical route is to use a hand crossbow combined with the crossbow expert feat to be able to have a bonus action attack and or the loading property, as well as the sharpshooter feat to add 10 damage to your ranged attacks at the cost of a -5 penalty hit. So, regardless of what path you take, whether it's one of those or something completely different, Most fighters will want at least one, if not two, feats to kind of support their weapon of choice. But because we get so many, uh, you can really use these feats as a fighter to get feats that aren't ability score increases to really build those features into your character. And when taking into account the power of a fighter, you really have to consider all of these extra feats. Now, at level 5, fighters get extra attack. This means that when we take the attack action on our turn, we can attack twice instead of once. This applies to every action that we take on our turn. So if we action surge at this level and take the attack action again, we would still get to make 2 attacks, which leads us to have a total of 4 attacks at this level. At level 6, fighters get their second ability score increase or feat. Most classes have to wait until level 8 to get this, and having this second feat this early is unique among all classes. At level 7, fighters get their next subclass feature, and the power level on these varies pretty wildly. Some of them are really bad, some of them are quite powerful, and they can improve on earlier features, but the mileage varies based on the subclass. At level 8, fighters get their third ability score increase or feat, and at this point, you are a full feat ahead of any other class due to that extra one that you got at level 6. At level 9, fighters get Indomitable. What this does is once per long rest, when we fail a saving throw, we can re-roll it, and we have to use the new result. Now, I don't really like this feature. It's not very good. Usually, when you fail a saving throw, it's probably going to be against something that you have a low chance of passing, and getting another chance, well, it can help. You'll probably end up failing it anyway. This is a feature that they are improving in the 1D&D playtest, but as of now, it is not the greatest thing in the world, although it can be useful in some situations. In my opinion, this is kind of a dead level for class features. At level 10, fighters get their next subclass feature, and again, the power varies on these, but typically they are good to very good. They usually build on the core concept of the subclass and or improve some of your existing subclass features. At level 11, fighters get extra attack rank 2. And what this means is now instead of making 2 attacks when we take the attack action, we can now make 3. And this is a really huge thing for the power level of fighters. This is a 50% increase in the amount of damage that you can do in a given round. And again, this applies with action surge. So if you take the attack action again, you get another 3 attacks. And this is something that makes the fighter at kind of this mid-tier very powerful, and having 3 attacks per attack action is absolutely massive. At level 12, fighters get their 4th ability score increase or feat. Again, this is at the point where most classes would be getting their 3rd, and we are a feat up due to that extra feat we got back at level 6. At level 13, our Indomitable feature improves to 2 uses per long rest, and we can't use them both on the same saving throw. Again, I don't really like Indomitable. It's nice, but it's not very reliable unless you've used feats to improve some of your other saving throws, which is something that you absolutely can do as a fighter. But in my opinion, again, this is a little bit of a dead level. At level 14, fighters get their 5th ability score increase or feat. And this is another level where fighters alone get a feat. And so we are now 2 feats ahead of all other classes. At level 15, fighters get yet another subclass feature. And again, the power on these varies, but they are typically good to very good. And again, they will build on earlier features and or the core identity of the subclass. At level 16, fighters get their 6th ability score increase or feat, and this is when other classes get their 4th, so we are now 2 feats ahead, and we'll stay there the rest of the level progression. At level 17, we get 3 uses of Indomitable per long rest, but more importantly, we now get 2 uses of Action Surge per short rest. Now, we can't Action Surge more than once on the same turn, but this means that now we can potentially Action Surge twice in combat. So if there's something that really needs to die, we can kill it. One of the things about Dungeons and Dragons and kind of tabletop war games in particular is that burst damage is very valuable. If you can kill an enemy before it gets to have a turn, you have basically, you have mitigated all of the damage that it could have possibly done. And the best crowd control condition that you can possibly inflict on any enemy is dead. So this is something that will enable a fighter to just go to town and hopefully kill enemies. And we've made one of their best features even better at this point. At level 18, get our final subclass feature, our capstone. And again, the power on these varies pretty wildly, but they are good to very good. And I don't think if I was a 17th level fighter, I would want to skip this feature by any means. At level 19, we get our 7th ability score increase or feat. And yeah, this is nice and very solid. We have 2 extra feats on any other class in the game. At level 20, fighters get their class capstone, which is extra attack rank 3. So now when we take the attack action on our turn, we can make 4 attacks. And again, this applies with action surge. So if we action surge, we can make another 4 attacks for a total of 8 on one turn. And if we do that again with our second use of action surge on the next turn, that would be a total of 16 attacks across turns, only using our actions. Now, this is a 33% increase in the amount of damage that we could output, which honestly is not bad for a capstone, even if it's not flashy and it's a pretty simple thing. All right, so let's talk about multiclassing the fighter. So a fighter, you need either 13 strength or 13 dexterity to take a level outside of fighter or take a level in fighter if it's not your class. And if you take a level in fighter and it's not your first class, you get proficiency in light armor, medium armor, shields, simple weapons, and martial weapons. It's important to note that if you want to get that heavy armor proficiency, you need to start your career as a fighter. Now, one of the interesting things about the stat requirements on multiclassing into fighter is that just about any character is going to be able to meet the multiclassing requirements because the stats are honestly pretty easy to do. Most characters, if they're not strength-based, will probably want at least a 14 dexterity to kind of contribute to their armor class and their initiative. And a strength-based character is easily going to have 13 strength to, make use of their primary features, and thus this class will be very accessible. So, what does the fighter go best with? And in my opinion, fighter goes best with anything. And there are several reasons here, but they work with both casters and other martials. So casters can benefit from armor proficiencies to boost their armor class, constitution saves, which are really important to make saving throws while you're concentrating on a spell, as well as action surge. Now, the rules about limiting your spell casting only happens when you when you cast a spell with your bonus action. So, and I've made a video about that you can look at up over there. But importantly, when you action surge, you can take another action, which can be another spell. So potentially, if you were a wizard with 2 levels of fighter, you could use your action to cast a fireball, and then action surge and cast another fireball, and that is 100% allowed by the rules. Remember, the rule is if you cast a spell with your bonus action, the only spell you can cast the only other spells that you can cast on that turn are cantrips with a casting time of 1 action. So as long as we don't use our bonus action to cast a spell, we can fire off whatever spells we want with our action, reaction, and extra actions from action surge. Now, other martials can benefit from having a fighting style, the action surge feature, and the easily accessible subclass features at level 3. So overall, any class can really heavily benefit from a dip into fighter. What about something who wants to be a pure fighter? Now, a primary fighter can also benefit from a variety of small dips, but a pure fighter is also very strong. A primary fighter potentially can dip just about anything because of the stat requirements and the ability that you can probably have a decent mental stat. And it really depends on your character what other things work, but you can dip just about any class into fighter, and you can dip a fighter with just about any class, just depending on how you are set. So let's summarize and talk about ratings. So offensively, I give the fighter a 4 out of 5, which is the highest rating I've given any core class up until this point. The ability to output a lot of attacks and, as well as have action surge for burst, as well as our access to a bunch of extra feats, means that the core fighter class is really well set up to just deal damage and kill things. Now, the reason it's not a 5-star is because we are lacking a lot of things that can potentially boost our damage, namely spell casting. having a some kind of buff on us that would use our concentration, that would say add damage to our weapon attacks, would be a big deal. And so when you're multiclassing a fighter and you want to go damage, you have a very strong core to build on and probably just need to add a little bit of spell casting. Now, in terms of defense, I give the core fighter class a 3 out of 5. They've got heavy armor, they've got a lot of health, they've got a little bit of healing with second wind, and they potentially have some spare feats they can use to fortify other saving throws. Now, the biggest weaknesses of the fighter defensively are they don't have the ability to get their HP to extreme levels, nor do they have their AC to extreme levels, nor do they have very good like temporary hit points or defenses against elemental damage. So if you're trying to make a fighter better defensively, those are kind of some things that you look for in a multi-class or a subclass. In terms of control, I give the fighter a 2 out of 5. Control is kind of their ability to lock down an enemy and control the battlefield. The reason that they're not a 1-star here is because fighters can be decent grapplers if you go the strength route, because they get proficiency in athletics. And you can also take feats that will enable you to kind of control the battlefield, namely the Sentinel feat. This lets you make opportunity attacks against enemies if they leave your reach, even if they disengage, or if they attack one of your allies while they're within 5 feet of you, you can slap them. And so having those extra feats kind of lets them take those more situational feats if you want to control aspect. Now, support, I give the fighter a 2 out of 5. This is kind of their ability to support and help their allies. And the reason I give them a 2 out of 5 here is they have some natural abilities, some of that coming with feats to kind of lock down enemies and keep them from attacking your allies. I would kind of put the defensive fighter with the protection or interception fighting style here. So there's a little bit they can do to help, but not a whole lot. In terms of skills, I give the fighter a 1 out of 5. They don't really have anything beyond their core class skills that can help in terms of doing out of combat things. If you have set up your character well with your background and your skill choices, you will probably have a niche for skills in your party, but you may not be the best at them. You might be, say, the second best. And so you will have something to do, but a fighter is not a class that is about making skill. In terms of complexity, this is a rating I give based on how difficult it is to play the class, where a 1-star, like the Barbarian, is very easy, and a 5-star, like some of our past full casters, is very hard. This rating is mainly based on the number of decisions that you have to make either on a turn or while setting up your character. And so, in my opinion, the fighter is a little harder to play than the Barbarian, but not much. You don't have a huge amount of choices to do in combat, depending on what your subclass is. But you have some, and there are some key choices that you make during your creation based on what kind of weapon you want to use, and you have feats to pick and that kind of thing. So relatively easy to play, but not quite as easy as the Barbarian. So that is our core class overview on fighter. What did you think? Have you played a fighter? What do you like about fighters? What do you dislike? Please let me know in the comments. I've played quite a bit of fighters, and I like to use them on a lot of my multi-class builds, mainly because Action Surge is huge for burst. So if you are a regular viewer, I want to thank you for sticking with me. I know these last few weeks I haven't put out any content. Life has been crazy, but I'm going to be trying to catch up in the coming days, and we should get back to our regular schedule. So again, my name is Nathan. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.